Alright, camera is on. Let's put money in the bank on. Light. That's still way too hot to drink, but g'day guys, Tobani here, and welcome to the first episode of Chit Chat Chai. Da 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 da. You guess it. This is a chai that I just brewed. Albeit smelling absolutely delicious. It's rather hot because it just come off the stove. I do have something else on the stove, so I maybe over the next 10 minutes just need to go over and check that out. So if I don't get it done in 10 minutes, I'm going to have a quick just run off, check. I'm making medicine on the stove. Anyway, that's a whole other video available on my Patreon, but I won't say any more than that. Alright, with that all being said, welcome to the first episode of Chit Chat Chai. And now Chit Chat Chai is a little bit of backstory because this episode is all about backstory. A little bit of backstory. Tamsin and I, in 2024, went to India for 3 months. So last year we were in India. And when we're up in the Himalayas, like really perched up high, super isolated, we were spending a lot of time in deep meditation for like the whole day basically. And the very few times that we would speak, we would like share a chai or something and like reflect on our philosophical ponderings, our learnings, what has come up through connecting with the stones and the energy lines of the Himalayas and where we had traveled, like real like beautiful deep introspective stuff. And so we like kind of joked around that this was our time of chit chat chai. And so for me, it really resonated something. I came up with like the alliteration of it all. So, oh hello darling, your perfect timing. Tamsin just walks in. There you go, manifestation. You're speaking. Oh, Salva. And so yeah, we basically were spend a good portion of the day just chatting over a chai or some form of hot beverage about what we were like going through and learning about. And so kind of fast forward 9 months, here we are. And I really wanted to set up a container where I could speak about things, as I alluded in my last video. And what that container is, specifically, is around like my philosophical and mathematical ponderings and like all metaphysics and all that stuff. I wanted to house it in somewhere because we need to speak about it now more than ever, because there's been a massive activation on our timeline and we need to start to embody this information as sacred truth, which we do out here because we live in the middle of the forest. We have no external factors around it, so I can turn off my internet and then nothing will impose on like limiting what I know to be true of my human existence. And because of that, it's allowed me to really like align my brain. And what I mean by align my brain is kind of harmonize the yin and the yang. And where I'm leading with this is understanding the whole architecture of the universe. And as I just alluded to, like a little bit of the backstory around where the name of Chit Chat Chai came from, I'm going to jump into the first topic of conversation today. Let me just find it in my journal. Alright. Yeah, perfect. Here we go. I'll see if this is a bit. Oh. Yeah. Oh, Tams, there is chai in the pot.
Oh, epic.
Yeah, if you want some. Prego. Okay. So, this episode of Chit Chat Chai is all about, obviously you can read it in the title, but I haven't said it yet, roots of mathematics. Now this might seem a little bit boring on first glance, but I promise you it's not. And the whole way that maths has been posed to the collective subconscious and conscious, and at least in the Western world, has been very structured, very masculine, very literal. Now I said in my last video that mathematics and like making money and a few things that are like super hyper dominated by the masculine energy right now in a negative kind of way are intrinsically feminine by nature. And now one of those being mathematics. I reflect on my time when I went to engineering school with Tam sometimes. And this was like, you know, just before we met each other. And, you know, so I was single. And there was like 99% men, right? It's like mathematics, engineering, all of that like is a boys' club. Complete, utter boys' club. Which is really weird because now that I kind of sink back into what I know to be true in my heart, it just seems very like... just very disjointed in how we pose all of these beautiful feminine things in our minds so that we're disconnected from them and just perceive them and keep them away from us. And I just want to like break all that down. And so I've had my own like, you know, ways that I saw like the beautiful synchronicities of maths when I was a young boy. And I have to shout out to my maths teacher, who's actually a subscriber of mine from high school, Mrs. Walker. Thank you so much. You had a fucking awesome impact on my life and a complete blessing, because the way that she taught me maths was to see it beyond what it was for just trying to solve something to get an answer correct to then pass a test. Like that's one way to just completely nullify the divine beauty of the sacred like art formulas that create our architecture of reality, is put them in a testing environment where we make it clinical and then condemn people for not understanding it straight away. That's one way to do it. Miss Walker did not do that, however. But another beautiful lady, Tamsin, also introduced something that really kind of shifted my mindset around mathematics. And she discovered this in a book called Great Cosmic Mother by Monica Stjuge. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. S-J-O-O. That's how you pronounce. Yeah, that's it. I got it here actually. Ready? I grabbed it as. And see, even the O's have dots on top of them. So I don't know how the fuck to say that, man. Anyone that's from like Northern Europe that understands how to pronounce that and can translate it, can you put it in the comments so I can give Monica all the respect that she deserves. But in this book, this is a crazy book. Tam's like obviously has just, you know, spent a lot of time in this and has divulged a lot of wisdom from this back into my mind. Anything that she like, you know, thinks that might be relevant for me. And one of those things of relevancy was understanding the roots of where mathematics came from. And Monica speaks about the moon calendars as like a whole chapter in her book. And in that cycle, and in that chapter, she speaks about how the first tracking of cycles or creating numbers or counting was based on the moon in the sky. And now the feminine essence and the feminine form in the three-dimensional human plane embodies that energy innately, obviously. So by default, fundamentally speaking, that women, being that representation of the moon cycle embodied, are in fact innately the same like essence and energy of mathematics, being feminine. So once Tam's like really relayed this information of like counting the moons and tracking the stars and the cycles and planetary alignments and all of that beautiful like kind of what we've posed in the Western world now as spirituality, is the very essence of what makes mathematics beautiful, but we've just detached them because we've hyper-segmented them and really displaced them from what their roots of truth are, around understanding the patterns and symbology within our beautiful like three-dimensional experience to understand the holistic capacity of the consciousness that we are a part of. Now we can see this when we examine like sacred geometry. Now that's the one area that I'll just go into as in whole spiel. But when we see, and you know, we grow food, right? We grow a lot of food and veg out here. And when you see a seed start to open up, you see all the sacredness of life coming from the spiral. Like you see the tangible beauty of the sacred spiral of life unfolding from your very eyes. Now, you don't have that experience unless you grow food. So, like, I feel like it's my moral duty to, like, you know, really showcase the links between the natural world and these, like, areas that structurally create our society, and they're fundamentally, innately natural and feminine, but we are disconnected within them from our masculine, which is our mind, side. Alright, so that all being said, we now know that, like, mathematics is here to, like, represent and count, like, patterns and the feminine essence. And what I wanted to then go into now is, like, kind of a little bit of, like, the lesson aspect of what we now know to have this form of, like, femininity to it. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't, like, a masculine aspect to mathematics. And that is, you have to be very, very rigorous in how you conduct following that equation. And so if you deviate from the equation, i.e. if you deviate from the sacred path, you will not get to the end. So you have to be very structured in how you contain the femininity that is innately the mathematics. So that is where there's that real divine beauty within mathematics of having both polarities. Now that is where I want to, like, take this first lesson, is lines of symmetry. Now when we are, like, being first shown the universe and learning in, like, the natural world, one thing that I, like, always saw was how beautiful things were when, like, they looked the same on either sides, and, like, then I came to know that we call that as lines of symmetry in, like, mathematics. And so when we look at our own human experience, because there's this big thing in, like, the scientific world that we need to observe and have, like, quantifiable evidence, rather than just, like, oh, it's my human experience that, like, I'm experiencing and therefore I know it to be true. And so, like, that in of itself is setting up failure, because, like, yeah, we can take a moment in time and get, like, data to represent that moment in time. That's great, that's mathematics. But what's, like, but that data in time is part of a bigger formulae that's a symbol, and so that isn't finite, defined by one number of time. So in order to then, like, try to examine mathematics from that perspective of, like, finite time, just will set you up for failure. So we need to actually start to try to examine our human experience, to live the experience, because living the embodied experience is the feminine way. So the only way we can fully understand the mathematics is to start to embody the feminine way. And I know this sounds, like, really, like, you know, potentially different to where you're at around posing mathematics, but I just really want to, like, set this all up. And so when we look at lines of symmetry within our own body, let's, like, just do that. So from my physical body, I can cut one line of symmetry down my field, which is literally straight down the center line of my body. And so that creates a positive and a negative. So if I have one line that basically starts and stops, it means that I have polarity on that line. I have some point that's positive and some points that's negative. Now, in our human experience, our feet actually ground us to the earth. So we know that that's our negative pole. So therefore, if our feet are our negative pole, then the top of our line of symmetry, being our mind's eye and our third eye, must be the positive pole. So if I now know that I have some form of polarity within my lines of symmetry, what does that then information tell me? Well, that alludes that if I have a positive and a negative, they actually mean that they have a field between them. And now we represent this as, like, a magnetic field or a torus field. So because I have polarity that starts here or starts at the ground, wherever, it doesn't matter, I now have a torus field of energy simply because my physical body has polarity within it. So by default, by having polarity, it has a positive and negative that creates a magnetic field. So I by default in my human body have a magnetic field. So then if I know I have a magnetic field that is represented in the shape of a torus field, how many more lines of symmetry do I have? Well, I have the first line here, and that still knows to be true, but if I have an energy body, I then also have a second line of symmetry that cuts me through at a half point. And so now I get a t-axis like this. However, because that t-axis, or that kind of torus field that I'm now drawing on the screen, that's a two-dimensional representation or a cross-section of the holistic rounded torus field that I actually tattooed on myself. So I'll use that as visual demonstration. So see how that's got three-dimensionality kind of to it? That's actually how our torus field is, and therefore we actually know just by default, by examining the human experience, we can already start to see the architecture, i.e. the lines of symmetry within our body, creating the dimensional reality that we live in simply because of the mechanism that we are housed in, being an energy body and a physical body all at the same time. Alright, so that is that for now. I'm just going to leave that there. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. And yeah, I hope I've kind of summarized and explained that as succinctly and as concisely as possible that I know to be true. And really start to pose up how we can really kind of sync between the spiritual understanding of knowing we have this formula, unity that we know to be true within all of our hearts, and this structured rigor that we do find ourselves in this third dimension, that we have to have this form of linearity in and amongst our movement in this reality, in this timeline. Albeit that linearity not needing to be straight, as we just saw through the torus representation. By having something that is finite and straight, we actually create something that is ultimately connected. And that is represented in understanding the lines of symmetry, which is one of the first things that we as children really start to visually see and recognize as pattern recognition, seeing where I can see 2, 1, 2 of different colored blocks, and all of those things start to come down to representing lines of symmetry, similar to what our ancestors did with representing similarities of the lines of symmetry of moon phases. By charting them out, they were able to see via lines of symmetry where those cycles were occurring. So when we come back and examine the same principles as what our ancestors did when they were first tracking mathematics, and examine ourselves from that rigored structure of the scientific world currently, we can really start to connect that quantifiable and quantifiable and data, and then the quality that we experience in the human existence together. Alright, with that all being said, that's the first Chit Chat Chai. I didn't even touch any of my chai because it was that hot, so I'm just going to have a sip now. And say thank you so much for watching. Yeah, I really hope this resonates with you. If it does, give it a thumbs up and a comment below. I'd love to start getting into the nitty gritty. Has anyone else made these connections and things like that? I would love to hear your thoughts, because ultimately if we all work together and kind of study the human consciousness and the collective consciousness, then we can all kind of grow, and that's what we're all here to do, because ultimately we're all reflections of the same thing, experiencing it in of itself all at once. Alright, with that all being said, I love you, and I'll see you in the next Chit Chat Chai. Ba 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 ba.